See how this mic goes. If it's not great, I'll just do teacher voice. So, have we teachers in the audience? Any hands up, teachers? Hands right up. So that's good. I'm an ex-teacher. I don't want you to think that there's somebody sort of standing up and then telling you if we're going to talk about the curriculum and so on. I mean, one thing I hate as a teacher, I think most of us do, is non-teachers standing up and saying this is how you teach. You should be doing this in the classroom and so on. So my background is ICT teacher. ICT and computing for 10 years. Okay. There's a hidden keyboard and a hidden mouse. Fantastic. So, really, I'm not going to go into detail about Magic F5. So, not going to go into detail about the curriculum, but we are going to touch on it. And if I do sort of forget, or if there is a message that doesn't come across for teachers who are sort of concerned about that, and I think there is a big issue at the moment that we'll touch on, is September's coming, there's a new programme of study, do not panic. All this coding stuff in the media, all this nonsense, just forget about it. You do not have to be some mad skilled coder by September. It's the start of this journey. It's going to be 5-10 years down the line before we start to get it completely right. In the meantime, we can do amazing, interesting things, and the kids love it, and the kids will be engaged, and so I'm just going to say, do not panic. September is coming. It's not the sky's falling. It's a great opportunity, and it's going to be good. So this is a little chap called Now. He's a robot. He costs a lot of money. He's a great robot, and he's an educational robot, and there's nothing to do with Raspberry Pi. There's not a Raspberry Pi inside that robot. But I found myself at an event last year, and it was for teenagers who were walking around and looking at STEM and seeing how they could get involved in engineering and stuff. And so this guy is on the stand across the way from me. I mean, really a corridor away from me. And he dances and he sings. And if you hold his hand, he wakes up, and he's really cute. And of course, the teenagers all clustered around him, taking pictures of him. And there's me trying to teach them a bit of Python. Okay, I'm 5 feet away, and I'm trying to teach them Python. And of course, I was on to a losing battle. How can I compete with that? In the end, what I really did say to them, I said, look guys, this is programming, this is computing, it looks dry, but this is the start of that robot. And in fact, what I ended up telling them is, without that, there is no cute, awesome robot that sings and dances. And of course, they ignored me and kept taking pictures of the robot, which is fine. But it really is important to understand that we've become this sort of nation, if you will, of consumers of technology, and we've forgotten how to create, and it's something that we've lost. We did used to teach it. We're going way back. There's Ada Lovelace, first programmer, maybe, but she certainly was involved in Babbage's analytical engine. And back then they were thinking about algorithms. They weren't thinking in terms of programs. They were thinking in terms of how to think and to do things. And fast forward 140 years or something, some of you might recognise yourself there. I do. That was me until my mum kicked me off the TV, because that's life was on. That was what you did. You hooked up to the TV. And they had these user guides, and the user guides were fantastically unpatronising. They were this thick. They were full of fantastic things. You could go through that user guide from start to finish and become pretty competent. And in fact, that's actually how a lot of people, including our own Evan Upton, who's the CEO of Raspberry Pi, how he got started. Just programming, plug it in, and in fact the ethos behind that is the ethos behind the Raspberry Pi. You plug it into a telly, and off you go. So we come to 1999, and if you do go back that far as a teacher, you'll know that things changed. They put the C into IT. The report came out, and in 1999 they changed the name to ICT, and suddenly we were teaching this thing called ICT. It wasn't all bad, and certainly not as bad as people make out, but things did change drastically, and teaching computing dropped off, and in fact we stopped teaching computing. So in 2011, Eric Schmidt, chairman of Google, he gave this hour-long lecture. It was actually about TV, and there was about 3 sentences in there that just said, "You guys have just thrown away your computing heritage. How stupid of you. And you used to be brilliant at it." Yes, we did. And now it's all gone. And And then Go picked up on this, and suddenly thought the sky's falling, and Betty turned around and said, we're going to change everything, we're getting rid of ICT, we're going to bring in this new computing. Really, in the space of a few months, that happened. Something like we're disapplying the curriculum of ICT. So some good points to that. Such as, my opinion as a teacher, the sort of levelling and stuff in ICT, but there's some bad points. But of course, now everybody thinks this is how it happened, but in the background for years and years before that, there's people like Computing at School, ECS, Royal Society, and Nesta all looking into this and pushing and pushing and pushing. And so actually a lot have been going on in the background. And including ourselves, okay? Not deliberately put it over Mr. Gill's face, but it just happens to be centred on the screen. And so we made this thing. In February 2012, we started selling the Raspberry Pi, and the idea was to give kids a personal computer. They could plug it into their screen, they had ownership of it, they could play with it, they could hack, they could mess around. These are things that you couldn't do in the classroom at the time. And actually, even when I left teaching a year ago, still couldn't do it, and you see it a lot today. There's lockdown machines. I understand why they're locked down. I don't think it's healthy. In fact, if you look at my Twitter feed, I blogged, I think yesterday or the day before, on classroom spaces and learning spaces for computing. But really, we want this ability to mess about and to experiment and hack. We ended up selling quite a lot of these, which has given us the money really to develop our education side. We're an education charity. We set out as an education charity. Education is what we're about. This is our focus. And it turns out that Raspberry Pi is very, very good for these things: creativity, problem solving, reasoning, analysis, modelling the real world, making projects that achieve challenging goals. Anybody recognise these terms vaguely? These are all straight from the new programme study, from the new computing programme study. I just pull them straight from there. And so it's not a coincidence that something like the Pi is good for that, or that indeed this new curriculum is fantastic, not because we want to turn everyone into programmers. Can you imagine anything worse? Or software engineers, but to give them this exposure. And there's an oft-used analogy that we don't teach music in school to turn everyone into concert pianists. We do it because some people would be fantastic at it. It's a very creative thing. We should be exposing people to a broad curriculum. And actually computing, you'll find, just goes way, way across the curriculum. Okay, it's not sitting by itself, coding. It's about creativity, music, if you've ever used Sonic Pi, and everything that goes in between. And so it turns out it's a bit of a toolkit for thinking, which is not a bad thing, because actually we don't teach thinking properly in most schools until you get to A-level. And then there's this thing called critical thinking. It's like, should we teach how to think critically at the age of 17? It's like, oops. It's about 12, 13, 14 years too late, perhaps, to start teaching people how to think. So this is really a year ago. This is our education team a year ago, Raspberry Pi. I'm in the green room. You may have seen me on YouTube and on TV and stuff, or at least you may think you have. This is all controlled from this green room. This is where they put me for a year. This was me as the Director of Educational Development. We didn't have the resources, the money, to really do what we wanted to do. What we wanted to do was make a website to support teachers, resources to support teachers, kids, and so on. We wanted to go out and do training. We wanted to go out and do a lot of outreach, and we just didn't have those resources. As of January this year, we do. This is our education team now. This is Carrie-Anne, me at the top, Stade and Ben. We've also got other people on in the foundation, such as Liz Upton, who's our head of comms, and Lance, who's our CEO. So we've got this really big team now, and so it's just gone from us really, really wanting to do stuff and to support teachers, and now we're actually able to do it. So we've launched a new website recently. It's got a few little videos on, and we're creating more. But right at the top is the resources. And as an ex-teacher myself, this is where I start to get excited, because if I go into there, I've got teach, learn, and make. Learn is sort of self-taught. You can go on and have a little play around the fiddle. Make is it's the whole maker movement. If you've not heard of the maker movement, it's to do with getting up and making things. Okay, often repurposing old stuff. Hacking, messing about, and experimentation, all these things that just link into the classroom that kids love to do. And in fact, if you start them on this little journey, it's getting them out of break, shooing them off to go and do something else, because you'll find out that actually they just start being very, very creative when you give them the tools and the opportunities to do it. So we started to make a lot of resources. The Teach thing is full schemes of work for teachers, so you can take that whole thing over the course of 6 lessons or half a term or 3 lessons. You can get the Raspberry Pi into your classroom and actually do something useful with it. This is all linked into the new curriculum or new programme of study, I should say. Each lesson plan has learning objectives that are tied into the programme of study. It's robust stuff, it's got homework, it's got all the teachery things that you would expect, or maybe your heads would expect, like plenaries and starters and three-part lessons, which I'm not a huge fan of, but people do expect to see them. So they are there for teachers. Of course, you can just dip in and out of them and use them yourself if you're not a teacher. So we've got things like Sonic Pi, which is making music and basically learning to code by stealth. You think you're making music and you're actually learning how to program. There's networking resources and so on. So we've made this specifically for teachers and educators. We did our first Pi Academy a few weeks ago. This is free CPD for teachers. It's for UK teachers only at the moment. We took 24 teachers in and we trained them. 2 days of free CPD. We even fed them water for them. All they had to pay for was the accommodation and the travel down to Cambridge. We've just opened applications for 2 new sessions in June and July, I think. So applications have just opened if anyone's interested. I'm completely biased. It was the best CPD I've ever been to. I've been to a lot of CPD in my 10 years as a teacher, some good, some appalling. As a teacher, you'll probably have that experience. But this was just really brilliant hands-on practical activities, how to use a Pi in the classroom, but also generic program and study things. So things like problem solving and creativity and algorithms and stuff that is in there, and from September, we'll be expected to be delivering that to our pupils. It was a great couple of days. The feedback we had was excellent, and it's open for more. We'd run them every week if we could, but we just don't have the time to do that. So sitting in the back looking really grumpy actually. Everyone's just laughing. I'm thinking, oh God, what am I doing here? That was really, really good. Outreach. I did a lot of outreach by myself last year, but now it's great. We've got more of a team. This is the Science Museum just doing some stuff with a competition where schools from all over the country have basically made things, and I'll show you one of the entries in a minute. So we like outreach because although it might only be an hour, that child often come along with parents as well as come along to do that thing they may have never seen anything before apart from a tablet or a lockdown PC that they're not allowed to play with, or the family laptop that dad says, if you dare go on there and wipe the hard disk off, what's going to happen to you, etc. So it might be the first time they've actually had a chance to mess about. And so we quite like those. You can see people going off thinking, well, that's interesting. And that's all they're interested in, for people to say, that's interesting. Not, I've learned how to code, not, I'm going to be a software engineer, just that I could do stuff with this. And that's actually what you find the kids start to discuss when you've shown them something like that. We've got a £1 million education fund. We're an education charity. We want to fund people whose motivation is to enhance and to improve computer education for sort of for school-age children in this country at the moment. That actually would sort of looking at overseas stuff. So there's £1 million there for people to apply for. It could be you need £500 for a classroom project. It could be that you need £50,000 to go and run a long-term project. It's up for grabs, all tied into this thing that we want to support people who want to go off and do this stuff. And so it finally boils down to this, that I think there's, I'll see it once I sort of showed them this. We did a workshop, and it's just flashing an LED on and off. It's actually the code that was on the second slide, Python code on the second slide. And they said, well, that's not that interesting, is it? And yet I've been to lots of workshops by then and found actually that if that's the first thing you do, we call it practical computing. Because if you're just going to do it on the screen, if you're just going to do Scratch on the Pi and there's a laptop, it's faster. You've already got it installed. But what we really like is the physical computing using the pins, and it's really the start of the journey. If you can flash an LED on, you can control something real using the computer, something that most children have not done up until now. They control things on the screen, and it's quite transformative. You can just see little light bulbs pinging, going on and off, and it's a really simple thing to do. You don't have to be in the same room as that LED. You can be on the other side of the world. It can be internet controlled, it can be controlled by a tweet, it can be controlled from Minecraft. So it starts to get quite powerful. And actually, you can do it the other way around, and I can put a signal in, I can use a button and get the Pi to do something. And the moment you say to them, well, you could use that as a peril detector. So when they open the door to your bedroom, it sets off a little alarm or tweets a picture of them coming into your room, then there's no stopping them once they understand that they can do things with it. And it's about tools for jobs. It's not about coding for the sake of it. It's completely pointless. It's about learning to use technology to do stuff you want and not what the computer wants. So I switch on my Windows machine. I like Windows, I'm anti-Windows, I'm a fan of Windows, but I switch on the machine and says, do you want to delete these icons? They've been on your desktop for a while, you haven't touched them. Shall I empty the trash? Shall I update antivirus? And we really want to switch that round. And when you start that Raspberry Pi, it just blinks at you, like this, like in the old days. Which wasn't as good as people think, but it blinks at you. And it blinks at you because we want you to tell it what to do. And even if that's just a quick log on, the kind of command line, and just to find out what files and stuff are in there, that's fine. You've seen more than most people who are just consumers of tech have ever seen. And so we really want to make this switch in people's heads. Because once you can do that, you can start to do things like this. This is the school that won the PA competition at the Science Museum recently. They've got a little robot with an LCD screen in its mouth, and it scans the barcode of the thing you're going to throw away, and it'll tell you whether to put it in the normal bin or whether to put it in the plastic recycling bin or the metal recycling bin and so on. So that's a real thing. It's almost like a commercial product in a sense. They've thought about it and they've made it, and it's something you could not do without practical computing. And of course, if you move on from that, you move on to things like throwing bears off balloons at 40,000 kilometres, 40,000 metres. This is Dave Akerman's Babbage sort of skydiving out the balloon. And then usually I'd finish off by making some cheesy pun at Little Sky's the Limit, but that was last year. I've kind of moved on from that. Little Sky's the Limit. And it really is this little journey from flashing an LED, understanding how a computer works, being able to see what's inside it and what it does to create things. We don't want to make everyone into a software engineer, but we do want to make everybody into a thinker and a creator and somebody who can solve problems, and that's our mission. It ties in with the new program of study perfectly, and it's a start of a journey that we hope in sort of 5-10 years we're going to see people blowing us away with what they can do and really understanding tech and being able to use it to create, and that's why we're here. Thank you. Have we got time for questions, or am I? No.
So it's about 2 minutes.
2 minutes questions. Any questions at all? Yes?
Your Pi Academy is obviously for people who are going to try and evangelise the word out. I guess that's what you're aiming at the moment. And would you expect kind of like a second level, which is going to be aimed at kind of like the
Yeah, it is. I mean, the community is huge, and I forgot to thank people like Mike and Tim for doing stuff like this. The reason you guys are quite successful is the community, and we really want to tie into that for the educational resources. So, yeah, we do want them to evangelise, but what we'd really see them doing is to do something quite useful in the classroom that we can then put on the site and everybody else, and we can sort of transmit it that way. I'm not trying to make a herd of Romans striding across the land, doing good. But what we want to do is people to feed into that and say, well, I can use that for my lesson, I can use that for a lesson. And hopefully, yes, we do want to take that further, and it might be paid, because we've got the charity with limited resources. So if we do take it to non-educators or to people who just want to learn those skills, or maybe...
Sorry, no, I understand that it's for education, but the academy at the moment is obviously aimed at trying to get a number of kind of like people who will lead and teach other educators, as I understand it. And I was wondering, would you then foresee, once that process has started, that you would actually include, say, just teachers who aren't kind of like the educator of educators, as it were.
Yeah, no, that's what I was getting at, absolutely. I would love to train everybody if they just had the slightest interest in computing, not even in the Raspberry Pi, just computing. The education thing is important for us, but yeah, and it might come down to the fact that that's paid. If a local authority says, I want to train this, or a software company says, we want to come and do this, then so it probably will be paid. But with the free stuff, we only do so much free stuff. Those sandwiches are expensive. Anyone else? Anyone else? I'll sort of take it outside. I'll go on Alan quickly if we're 30 seconds, because we started late, and yes, we did. Yeah.
Two questions. One was the fund. It said it was going to be announced at the beginning of May, and then the other one was: is there an argument to say that you should run the Pi Academy every week?
There is an argument, and we discussed it, and we wanted to, and it is simply down to money. You know, we sell 3 million pies, and we sell them quite close to cost. So we're not, swimming in money, but we also have a charitable mission. It all goes back into education, such as that. We'd love to run them every week, and it might come to us being able to do that at some point. We'd love to. The grant fund is, it's not officially open now, but if you drop me a line, and it will be announced in the next couple of weeks for the first lot, but we certainly should start thinking about applying if you want to apply, yes. Yes?
Just to respond to the 2 points made there, perhaps the Pi Academy, as we say, maybe is for those that are going to go out and evangelise, but then it maybe forces people like Kaz to maybe run other smaller sessions. I know in the Cambridge area we're looking to run smaller Raspberry Pi workshops, so maybe it forces those groups as well.
I definitely think that's that. The government, in my opinion, it's like £3.5 million they put into it at the moment. It's such a drop in the ocean, it's nonsensical. So they've left it to people like us and Kaz and Code Club and lots of other groups to do that. And I think we've all got to work together. I think it really is. We've got to roll up our sleeves and do it, because the government isn't going to do it. So you're absolutely spot on. We should all be talking and sort of working together more. I think I'll sort of run outside if you want to talk more. Thanks.